She wasn't actually involved in the incident at all. So that's the two black guys went into a Starbucks and just sat there, and then and tried to use the bathroom, and then the black manager said, "Hey, you got to buy something if you want to use the bathroom." And when people got mad about the way that he treated the two black customers, the way the black manager treated the two black customers, Starbucks said, "Okay, here's a white chick. We're going to fire her." And she wasn't even in the store when the whole thing occurred.
Whoops.
And that's how the jury came to the conclusion that, oh,
so you're racist.
There's something not quite right here. Good morning, everybody. And good morning, everybody. How we doing today?
I'm all right. Well, you weren't asking me. You might have been asking them.
You know what? You are among everyone.
I'm a
you
people.
are among everyone.
I'm a people?
You're a people. You count as an everybody. Man, I was listening to one of my sci-fi books the other day, and they had an engagement with a sniper, and the boss sent one of his robot Marines to deal with the sniper, and the sniper got beat up pretty bad, and then everything's over, and the boss says something like, "Oh, it was all right. It was a good day. Nobody got hurt." And the boss said, "Well, what about that guy I dropped on the way down the building, boss?" He said, "He sure looked like a nobody to me." So, good morning, everybody. We are talking this morning. We're going to be talking about some deep state stuff. And there's a couple of reasons that I want to talk about this particular topic this morning. I want to talk about it generally because it's a topic that I have interest in and concern about. And I know that my audience similarly has interest in and concern about this topic. So that's a good indicator right off the rip. But then Donald Trump made a recent statement about deep state, and he basically said, if I'm elected, I'm going to fire the deep state, which is a great, that may be all the reason I would ever need to vote for some. One of the key reasons Donald Trump is going to get my vote, at least in the primary, is that he often says, I will do X, and the X could be entirely in a vacuum without anything else, and it would be sufficient.
I see. Would you like a BLT?
Yes, I would.
Are you sure you don't need any other details?
I'm good. If there's a pickle spear and some fries on there, bonus.
I see.
Yes, I will take the pickle, but you had me at BL. You had me at B.
So part of what we're going to do this morning is we're going to watch a Tim Pool clip I have not seen, and a Tim Pool clip Chris wants for me to see in real time and to react to.
And so the clip is 13 minutes long. We're not going to watch the whole thing. We are going to watch about 1 minute of it without pausing.
Though I will say, if Donald Trump is talking about firing everyone, it's almost like he heard the comments that I had yesterday, where I was like, maybe you should just completely suspend the FBI.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's do the clip.
There's nobody else. Sorry.
That's the unfortunate thing, because I don't think his whole "I'm going to go in there and end everything" is the right way to create a new, better world.
Really?
That
actually surprises me that that's your position.
If I burned it all down, we'd all die in a horrible fire. Like, what's the value of that?
Well, you got to remove a tumor. Come on. Saying we want to weed out corruption is not the same as destroy the system.
Yeah, but he's like, I'm going to go obliterate the deep state is the most vague, nonsensical statement.
What?
Like, what does he mean? He's going to issue pink slips, and they're just going to say, "Okay, no."
Schedule.
Okay, I said we'd go through almost a minute without pausing, but that right there is the crux of what I want to talk about. He said, so Ian Crossland just said, I'm going to fire the deep state is the most vague, nonsensical. No, it's not. For a person to believe that Ian's statement has factual veracity, that person has to have a complete misunderstanding of the mere term deep state. So a big part of what we're doing this morning is defining terms. The deep state is not a vague concept. It is a very specific and well-defined entity. So for anyone out there who thinks that the existence of a deep state is some theoretical non-thing, that is some vague, ephemeral conspiracy concept, it's not. The deep state, this isn't analogous to something like the Illuminati or the Men in Black, right? This isn't some boogeyman in the dark that you can't point at. The deep state refers to a very specific set of entity. And that is, there are basically three things that are required to be considered a part of the deep state. You are a government official who is unelected. You are in a position to make policy, and it's almost impossible to remove you from that position. And that last piece is an important part of the whole thing. There is a habit throughout all of government structure, this includes in the military, to promote someone away from a position you don't want them in, because it's so difficult to fire someone if you've got somebody working for you that's shitty and useless and you want to get rid of them and they're impossible to fire. You promote them. Like, I'm tired of having a secretary that doesn't answer the phone, so I'm going to promote her to the next level because I don't have room in my department for that next level of entity. So she has to be transferred now to another department where they have room for that next level. And yes, you can make it all the way to the top just by being so aggravating that people promote you to get you out of their offices. Right? And that is what entrenches the corruption. And a lot of the corruption is a combination of two very important factors: incompetence and ideology. Once you put those two things together, like you'll find that a lot of your radical left-wing activists, they're not smart. Oh, we should tax the rich because Warren Buffett pays less in taxes than his secretary.
Yeah, they think they're smart.
How about you reduce the secretary's taxes if you have that concern, right? There's another option.
Yeah, you could just reduce everybody's taxes. And, you know, what you talk about with the ideology, you've talked about this. This is even a point that Rush Limbaugh made when the Lois Lerner scandal dropped. He said, hey, you're never going to find the smoking gun where Obama told Lois Lerner, get him.
Right.
Lois Lerner just knew, hey, all I have to do is put my thumb in the scale and I can delay their applications by 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and just make it such a pain in the ass for them to be nonprofit organizations that want to have some kind of sway in the political process. It will, in a de facto sense, stop them from being able to be a factor in the political sense. And one of the things about Stalin was many things, but he was shrewd and he understood how to take advantage of modern systems. And Stalin wanted anything that gave him the power of appointment, and he would appoint people to positions that also gave them the power of appointment.
Essentially, his strategy was deep state.
That's exactly what it was. Stalin was fine with his people being janitors for organization ABC, as long as it let them appoint more janitors inside organization ABC, because then he could reach his He could reach his tentacles out into everything.
Hell, imagine you get that one janitor in there, and he appoints, 20 more janitors to deal with this large building. And now all of a sudden, you own a janitors guild that can just choose to not take out the trash until you either promote one of them, by their demands, or pass a policy that they're interested in.
And I just want to touch on this because because the Fit Life with Danielle is so sweet until she's not. She says, let's be honest, Ian often speaks in general dumbassery. He's a beta male douche nozzle. That's... I don't ever want to be her enemy. I feel like she could make me cry.
I suspect this is probably the case. And then the... So back to the deep state thing for a second, and then we're going to play some more of this clip. I want you all to understand a great example in recent memory, a great example of the deep state, the danger of there being a deep state, is look at the bump stock, or not the bump stock, the pistol grip bans. That's a fantastic example. What you're talking about there is officials at the ATF. These are non-elected officials who are almost impossible to fire, right? And they have made policy. And the result of that policy is, in effect, people who are not elected to the legislature are legislating against your interests. And the legislation that they're creating in their policy, what is de facto legislation, by saying X is prohibited with the authority of the full force of government violence to enforce that policy.
Yeah, that violence thing is important, too. David Koresh was a piece of shit, but that didn't mean burning down fucking Waco was the answer.
Correct. So, the fact that bureaucracy, that bureaucratic entity even believes that Chevron deference allows it to construct legislation.
Until this summer when it goes to the Supreme Court.
Right. That's gonna. I cannot wait for that particular Friday.
Anyhow,
you know what? That Friday, we may just have to take the show on the road and go to a gun store live and buy pistol braces.
I like this plan.
Okay, so F the ATF, and by F the ATF I mean fire them all, abolish it. It's an unconstitutional organization. But this first claim that Ian makes here, that fire the deep state is a vague statement, is simply false. And I'll be fair, for somebody like Ian, he's not lying. He's just ignorant on the facts. The deep state is a very specific entity. There is absolutely 100% of a metaphysical conceptual object that occupies the existential space of that terminology. There is no vagary, no ambiguity to that whatsoever. Unelected official, policy-making authority, almost unfireable. Too easy.
Schedule F, as he already implemented in his first term, and then did not win re-election. Schedule F, as he already implemented in his first term, and then did not win re-election, so was not able to carry out. And then Biden, I think it was the Biden administration that reversed it. Basically he was setting the policy for, we are going to fire people who have been permanently in government and who should not be here anymore. The idea that you can get hired by the federal government, be bad at your job, be corrupt, and not get fired is insane. So when
get hired by the federal government, be corrupt, be bad at your job, and not get fired. I think I've told this story before. I'm going to try to get through it quickly. I was at the VA for services one time. This was a few years ago now. And I'm standing in line waiting at the office, and there's this dude that was probably a foot shorter than me and 100 pounds heavier. I'm a big old dude. This brother was 450 if he weighed an ounce, sitting in an office chair that had clearly been protesting the tyranny of his gargantuan ass for a decade.
He looked like Huel from Breaking Bad.
Yes. He looked like Huel from Breaking Bad if Huel literally never got out of his office chair. And it's finally my turn. And this dude who's just like slopped over, got his hand on the 10 key, says, "What's your social?" And I told him, and he types in 3 digits and starts snoring. And just before I was able to say, hey, brother, hey, yo, he goes, and looks at me like I'm keeping him up, like I'm wasting his time, and says, I says social. And I'm like, how? How are you sucking money out of my pocket, you tax leech titwomp? So yeah, the bad at your job and can't get fired is absolutely insane.
He implements Schedule F. He then says, if I get reelected, we're going to bring back Schedule F and start firing these corrupt individuals. Why would your position be that's bad?
Because he's talking about people that just got hired 6 weeks ago. He's going to fire them too.
But
obliterate the
what are you talking about?
He's going to
either them or they rule us forever.
Disband the NSA.
Yes,
like,
all of them.
That would be complete insanity. He'd disband the federal government. Like what?
Why is it insanity?
That's what they did to the Iraqis after the Gulf War, and it created.
They are
ISIS.
targeting us, Ian. They are targeting you. You.
Whoa.
That's right.
Whoa, hold on. The de-Baathification of Iraq. Wow. I don't think Ian understands what he just said by accident there. Like, woo. Okay. Culturally speaking, in a place like Iraq, when you get rid of the Muslim strongman dictator, they just find a new Muslim strongman dictator. For better or worse, it's not a bug of their system, it's a feature. To compare that here, oh my God! But you take the comparison in reverse. You mean you have a bunch of ideologically minded people that are willing to worship death in service of their ideals, and they've infested every level of government and need to be purged from it? Gosh, that sounds like Trump really does need to fire everybody if that's how you're gonna... Woo! That is not the comparison I would have made, but it's the one I'm gonna use from now on. Thanks, Ethan. Like, wow.
Real quick, I have somebody in the comments, Akash Saint, says, also, why does your colleague has long hair? I'm not sure who we're talking about.
Okay, but the whole thing about, okay, we can't fire everybody. Well, why not?
Right.
Some good people will get sucked up in the process. Okay. So if you work for a company and your company is corrupt and they're stealing money and they're treating customers like shit and they're doing all these things and the feds come in and they shut your company down for tax fraud. And I say this because this is a thing that happened to me once when I worked for the Buckhead Brewery. I showed up to work one morning and them doors were locked.
Oh, really?
And, oh, yeah. And they were locked with some very serious instructions for not walking inside the building.
Wow.
Okay? I didn't do anything wrong. I was out of a job, but I didn't do anything wrong. So to act like this is not a consequence of bad behavior, so what? And this whole thing about we've normalized having a big government, right? We've normalized, we just accept. It's a joke. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. It's some of the scariest words in the English language you can hear. And that was something Reagan said 40 years ago.
Yep.
So we've had another 40 years of normalizing this concept where, oh God, the federal government is going to take forever and they're going to suck and they're probably going to screw it up the first 2, 3, 4, 5 times they do it. we don't actually have to accept that as normal. You know, I actually feel a degree of sympathy for Ian. Have you ever known anybody that wouldn't get out of a toxic marriage because they just didn't see a way out?
I have.
How in the world am I going to pay my bills?
Right.
Where am I going to live? That's what Ian just displayed there. We're so used to abuse from our leadership. Woo.
Wow, do we use that word loosely?
But yeah, but no, he can't fire everybody. Why not? I mean, Elon Musk came in and like, what percentage of Twitter did he fire? Like 50, 60%? I still tweet every day.
Yep.
Like with no problems.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell me that the same thing can't happen inside the federal government, especially since we know that the way government budgets work is, okay, I was budgeted $1 million this year. I have to spend all $1 million, or I might not get that $1 million next year.
Right, and that is an absolute cancer in the government. Everybody's budget gets increased a certain amount every year, but it's increased from a baseline. It's convoluted, fuzzy math. So you have a baseline, and if you don't spend the whole baseline, then your baseline gets reduced, and so your increase is made against a smaller baseline. And when people say, when you hear politicians talk about we cut spending, what they did is they reduced the percent of increase above the baseline. She has coffee.
Oh,
let her coffee. Don't make her stand there.
Increase above the baseline.
Keep
Dear
going.
sweet Christ, I love you, woman.
Okay.
So that fuzzy math. You want to talk about a place that you can hide a lot of corruption, and that's how you end up with, an army unit buying all new, high-end, expensive, ergonomically correct office chairs and paying, 4 times market value for them. It's we've still got $1 million left in the budget. We need to get rid of it, or we won't see it next time. A caution site says, no, wait, black coffee is better. I like my coffee like I like, chopped up and stored in the freezer. Ground up and stored in the freezer. That's the one. So, and I just completely lost my train on that joke. But
Baseline.
Baseline. Oh no! I think I got to the end. You got
to that part of it.
I got through the thing. That's how you end up with. That's how you end up with the new chairs. The $1 million toilet. The whatever. It just
Gotcha.
A lot of our fraud, waste, and abuse happens at the end of the fiscal year when the individual departments are trying to get rid of the money that they haven't already
Well,
spent.
anyhow,
for
the
the
point
year.
is the point is to act like you cannot get rid of a huge chunk of the government, the employees, the problems. Like, as Steve said, if you got rid of the unconstitutional agencies, like, I don't know, the ATF would be a fantastic place to start. That old joke about, like, man, the ATF shouldn't be a government agency. It should be a big box
Yeah, it should
store.
be a party store.
Yeah.
And Sergeant Major mentioned earlier, Jack Welch started a policy at GE, and this policy was extremely effective and had great results. And you may think it sounds harsh, but let me be very clear about something before I read the rest of this quote. When a person says it takes all kinds, that person is wrong. It really, and I mean, it really doesn't take all kinds. Right? Terrorists kidnapping children and mutilating them for political gain?
No, they can
I
just
once
die.
had to decide that we didn't need those kinds. And let me tell you something. I have not missed them. I didn't miss them then, and I don't miss them now. But Jack Welch started a policy at GE of firing 10% every quarter. That is brilliant. And just like Cameron pointed out, 80% of Twitter eliminated Site still works fine.
Yeah, like
In fact, the site works even better now because you can get Babylon B there.
right.
I was starting to get worried for Juanita Broderick.
Oh, yes.
Brian Dawson says, you missed them. It took you 5 shots to hit one of them. Clearly, Brian, you've never seen me at the range.
But look, the point is to act like part of the reason why you can't get rid of the deep state is you think you can't get rid of this deep state. That is, everything about what Ian just said there is so illustrative. I understand why you wanted me to watch this live, but I wish you'd let me see it beforehand so I could have marshaled a few more points to pull out of it. Because yeah, the deep state is the bath party of the United States. Sure, Ian, I'm rolling with that. Anyhow, but part of the reason why you can't get rid of the deep state is you think you can't get rid of the deep state. It ends up being this self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, how in the world can we just fire everyone? How in the world can we just shut down entire departments? Well, you fill out the appropriate paperwork.
Yeah, for starters, you do.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what Schedule F was all about. We actually saw a lot of pretty significant shakeups as a result of Trump beginning to work with Schedule F. A lot of turnover at the VA, which was very important and has had some pretty positive results. Not quite as positive as I would prefer thus far, but I've had several very invasive surgeries at the VA and come out doing okay from them. And I mean, some of these surgeries have been on my head and involved peeling off half my face to cut. I've had some pretty serious work done at the VA, and thank God for them, because with Obamacare in place, I'm not allowed to buy private insurance. But that's a whole other piece of deep state problem. But yeah, what Cameron's saying about the foregone conclusion that you can't get rid of them, that they're almost impossible to get rid of is one of the defining characteristics of a deep state entity. And what Trump is promising to do, and has already shown by implementing Schedule F while he was president before, and getting rid of some of that, but not nearly enough, is that, one, he's willing to do that work, and two, there is a mechanism by which that can be done. And those are, like I said earlier, yes, I'll have the plate of bacon. You had me at B.
There's actually 2 methods of getting rid of them, but we're trying to avoid the second method.
Right. We're looking for some. Well, and that's. You know what? I'm glad you said it that way. Right. We fix our political situation. We go from the soapbox to the ballot box to the cartridge box, and the fact is that right now we have people. Like my example with the pistol brace, right? Like the example of the Supreme Court gutting the EPA's authority to restrict usage on wetlands in states and private properties. What we have are entities like the EPA, the ATF, et cetera, federal bureaucratic organizations that use policy to create law, which means that they are doing legislative work, which is done by elected officials in the legislature, not in the judiciary, not in the executive, but in the legislature, who are elected, which means that we can get rid of those people at the ballot box. But if you have people that are immunized against the ballot box, then there's nothing between them. There's nothing for them between the soapbox and the cartridge box, but for someone else who's on the ballot. Right? Your options are elect someone who will do the work correctly, or move on to the cartridge box. And despite my personal proclivities, I do try to encourage that we solve the problems without moving on to the cartridge box. We are in a civil war right now, but we are still fighting that civil war. And we're not headed for a civil war. Don't get confused there. It's happening, but it's still fifth generational meme war, psychological warfare, hearts and minds stuff for the most part. And I hope that it stays that way, but we've seen that the left does have a tendency to escalate to actual street violence, and eventually individual survival is going to require a reply to that. And I
yeah, vote blue no matter who. Yes. You know, it's funny, you bring all this up.
God, we just cannot end the show at 8 o'clock.
Well, you know, it's funny. I've been listening to some Game of Thrones retrospectives because it's been a few years since the terrible collapse known as Season 8 of Game of Thrones.
Well, the last episode was way better if you had this other kind of TV.
Right.
What do you think one of our clients would say to that?
I want my money.
I want my money back.
Yeah, okay, if you're unfamiliar with either the books or the movies, part of the basic thrust of the plot of Game of Thrones is that there's literally an invader at the gates that nobody takes seriously, that nobody believes is coming. They happen to be ice zombies in the show, but the point is that there's literally invaders at the gates that people don't believe in even existing. Meanwhile,
in fairness, the gates are in Canada and everybody's in Georgia.
Right.
So they're way far away. But yes.
But meanwhile, while they're pretending like there's not a problem with the invaders at the gates, there's a power squabble because the one king dies. You find out that the king is murdered, and then his brothers and everything else. And there's all these wars, and all these people are fighting. And you go through like multiple kings over the course of the story. But a lot of the king's court survives until the very end of the story. One could argue that these characters were actually the real power. That the person who actually sat on the throne was just a convenient figurehead. But they had this council that had things like the Master of the Coin, for example. Well, the Master of the Coin kind of de facto set policy because he was the one who had to figure out how to pay for it. And he was not the king. The point is, we've actually got examples of in fiction, rather, of exactly what we're talking about how the real power is not what you see as the power. The real power are the people that you can't see that influence the power in hand. Who has more power, the king or the queen that whispers to him on his pillow?
Right. And so analogously, what we have going on now is, while there's visible public squabble over who gets elected where, we have deep state entities that are not just illegitimately passing laws through policymaking. Keep in mind, the COVID research was funded by American entities. And I cannot believe I'm about to say something in defense of Barack Obama, but against the orders of the Obama administration. Right?
Whoops.
So we've got our public squabbles going on in the U.S. We've got our little Game of Thrones, right? Over flags and nonsense and pride and psychopathy, and all the while that we've got these cancerous entities trying to destroy the United States from inside. China is coming right down at the wall, running right over the brothers in black, and buying up farmland while we're not paying attention. And they're being funded with American taxpayer dollars in the form of research grants through their infiltration of the American educational academia.
Yeah.
Was that an adequately grim picture?
No, the whole rabbit hole about China buying up our farmland in and of itself is
a long walk conversation.
It's pretty terrifying in and of itself. But look, super long story short. The majority of that King's Court ends up getting violently murdered by the end of the series.
Yes.
Just saying. Okay. But at the same time, in all seriousness, all jokes aside, the problem of the deep state, Trump was actually solving it. That could be the one thing more than anything else, more than your monetary policy, more than anything. Like, just a random example, like David Chipman, that absolute piece of shit. What's he doing now? Yeah, you don't know, and neither do I. But you don't think he's got a job in the government somewhere?
Right. Mitch says Trump ran on draining the swamp in 2016 to 2020. Now it's getting rid of the deep state. He did nothing to drain the swamp, and he won't go after the deep state. Ray was appointed by Trump. Yes, Ray was appointed by Trump, and we're all very disappointed in that. As far as draining the swamp from 2016 to 2020, Trump actually did a lot. That there was more swamp to drain than was expected.
Well, and he did not have the cooperation of Congress.
Correct.
I contend, and I will probably be an old man sitting on the porch saying, if it just hadn't neutered Jeff Sessions and General Flynn, because you had that happen, and that was important. Well, and then Paul Ryan didn't cooperate with him. Trump had Congress, and he had a guy that claimed to be a budget-cutting conservative until he got control of the Congress and a president that would have signed anything that Paul Ryan put on his desk. So to say, well, Trump could have drained the swamp and he didn't, okay, that's true. But at the same time, oh my God, I can't with that. At the same time,
two people will get this. Caw-caw!
But at the same time,
maybe four.
Look, I'm willing to look. I'm just going to button it up and shut up. I would say that Trump deserves some slack. I dare say if the whole Russiagate thing hadn't happened, if Sessions and Flynn hadn't been neutered, if he'd had a compliant Congress, the criticism about, well, Donald Trump didn't get rid of the deep state or whatever wouldn't exist. Or even more frightening, it might, because instead of taking him on head on the way that they did, they could have tried to slide under his radar and preserve as much of the deep state as possible. But that's not what happened. What happened was from day one, Trump walked in and people were terrified to work with him because they had no idea if they were going to end up going down with him.
So to that, let me just remind you, as you're saying that there are essentially part of what you're saying is that there are a lot of Republicans who are the monoparty statist shitbags that fought against Trump for the entirety of his election, or I'm sorry, for the entirety of his administration. And to that point, they're still there. So part of the swamp draining has to happen at the ballot box. You have to stop re-electing shitty Republicans. And that might include you have to start finding decent men who will run against them. And that's tricky because the government jobs are so deeply corrupted and disgusting that good men don't want to go there. I don't want to sell away my morals, my principles for peanuts in pay. basically against what the time invested, it's not a lot of money, unless you're corrupt, right? So part of what has to happen is at the ballot box voting out shitty Republicans and all Democrats to the greatest extent possible. But to again, to Cameron's point about the persistence of those monoparty, uniparty shills, let's remember, a shitload of Republicans just yesterday voted against censuring Adam Schiff. So let me phrase that more correctly. They voted to underwrite perjuring yourself to the American people, lying to the public, with the explicit purpose of using lawfare to cause harm in an attempt to conduct a coup against a sitting president while holding an elected office.
See, it's way after 8 o'clock, and now you bring up the thing I studied up for, because that's what I thought we were going to talk about today.
As long as I can leave in 15 minutes.
You have just swerved into the thing that I thought we were going to talk about. No, we should. There's too much there to try and cram in overtime. We should just let it go. Because there's a.
Going to do a show at 9?
No. It's fine. It's all fine. No,
okay.
It's fine. We're way past. All right. Just kill it.
Yeah, we got to put a button in it there. The deep state's a real thing. It needs to be abolished and destroyed. We love you, and we'll see you tomorrow for Firearms Friday. Y'all be safe and take care.